Hey friends, what's going on? This is another one, Fun with Azure. This is Synapse Studio part 19, and it's Purview part 2. So what we're covering in that video here is really the integration of Purview into Synapse Studio. So what I did set up here and what we're going to review in that video here is an Azure SQL database that I set up for a scan, right? And we're going to look at the result of that scan. We gonna to do so to basically research and explore the result of that scan. We're gonna browse the Purview Studio GUI. We're gonna explore the lineage and for an example sort procedure that I built. Full disclosure here, the lineage is still as of June 26, 2022. It's still in preview. So I did have occasionally situations where the lineage didn't show up, but you can see here, this is basically that sort procedure as a snapshot integrated into Synapse Studio, where I actually do see this stored procedure. And we're gonna look at this, hopefully it's working. And these are the two tables that go in. Now this is a super simple example. You can have functions, temporary tables, multiple layers of processing here. So it's not just limited to those simpler use cases. And you know, this is pretty rich stuff, and it is in the beginning, right? Keep that in mind. But I do want to point out, I did have some aha moments where I felt like, oh wow, why doesn't that show? Because it showed yesterday. And it's not GA yet. I would expect though that with GA, and I think it's coming up in the next couple of weeks. It's those type of things are gonna be resolved. So review simple lineage. That's what I was just talking about, and then link Purview account to Synapse Studio, which is a prerequisite to actually see this all in Synapse Studio, right? So we already talked about the process here, right? We have a data map which holds all our metadata and lineage classification and all that stuff to make sense of it on top of those different use cases. Today's use case is really focused on data cataloging for producers and consumers primarily, but you can see there's a whole lot of other personas involved with Purview. And going forward, hopefully we can cover some or the other. And here as a source, we just have one source in that sample here. Obviously, I cannot, scan a real environment with one of my customers or so. I needed to set up some sample. But the concepts are going to be reapplicable to anything. This is the result of the lineage that I was talking about. We already talked about those questions, but I wanted to show them again because they're kind of cool. Here we have a formal definition of the data governance. I'm not going to read that to you. We talked about this last time. You can read that on your own dime. And then this is not too important here. So let's head into the world of hands-on stuff. So here we have this database that I was basically using as a test for the scan. This is my test CB. I hosted this on an Azure SQL database, and here we have a bunch of tables in there. This is basically the AdventureWorks Lite, just so you know. And we have a customer table here, and I think I'm using also the sales order header, which is here, right? And I created a stored procedure, and I played with this a bit. So I think the original one was like, let me refresh here real quick. The original one that I created was this one, and then to play around further, I created this one here. So they're almost the same name, both in the DBO schema, ASP_process_orders. And that's the one that has those two tables as basically sources for the lineage, right? So let's head back to Studio. Before we get into the details of this, I want to show you basically Purview Studio in action. And let me go home. This is Purview Studio, right? And you can see this is the sort of the catalog hub. When we coming in, and we can see we have one source here on top. There's one source. We have 21 assets. this is the one SQL database with 21 assets, right? So we could, I mean, there's multiple ways now to navigate to those 21 assets. You can basically go here, type in, like any kind of name that you can think of. It doesn't have to be a table name, but this could relate to a table. So now we're getting some values back that has some sort of correlation with customer, and search is it's not just direct search. Of course, there's definitely nuances to this. We should discover this or discuss this in more detail at some other point. But so now I have this customer table open, and let's just, I mean, I'm not covering all the pieces here. I want to cover the important ones. So when I go schema, let me see this, then I should see overview, properties. So there's some metadata information. See, this is interesting. Here I see the lineage in the other direction. I see this table here that we're looking at is actually part of the stored procedure, right? So the important part is the question, show me downstream what this table is used for. If I had multiple stored procedures here, they would all be listed here, right? So that's interesting from that perspective. What I found interesting here is that the schema doesn't show up. Now this may have to do with a scan that's still in progress. So, but normally you would see the schema here fully written out with all the columns. Not quite sure why not. Like I said, some of this is still in preview. So, you sometimes have those situations where stuff just doesn't show up the right way, but the lineage does this time. Okay, so and there's other information like contacts. So this is important from a curation perspective, right? We have experts, we have owners. Normally, from a data consumer's perspective, they want to know who is the expert on this table, because that allows them to potentially reach out, have a discussion. They may need to clarify, the grain, the definition of certain attributes, you name it. So there's a lot that needs to be discussed further, and that's what this is for. Let me check one more time here. That's there, and then properties. Yeah. So browse around. This is specifically for a single table. Now let's have a look at the stored procedure that I was talking about. And remember, we're in Purview Studio here, right? We're basically searching around here. So now I did search for the stored procedure and specifically for that, but obviously you could have other listed if these others are already scanned. That's the big if. And here you just saw, right? I went to the stored proc and I went to that properties tab and then to the lineage. Then I saw, hey, this stored proc consumes the customer table, and it consumes the sales order header table, right? And you can actually then also see switch to the asset. So I can go to that one, and then this is actually pretty cool because now I can, okay, so this is related to this as well. So I can sort of jump back and forth and look at those pieces and make sense of it, right? And that's definitely helpful to when it's about understanding those pieces and learning them and make sense of it. Okay, and like I said, this is a very simple example. In real life, those examples you're gonna have 6, 7, 8 sources at least, functions, different types of functions. And even data factories along the way. So we'll definitely have more. And to explore an existing data estate, this stuff is very helpful. I remember when I did this with like scripting and reviewing SQL tables via SQL scripts. There's certain DMVs that allow you access to this, but this is much more comfortable to do and much more easier to use. Now there are some shortfalls here at the moment. I think stored procedures are supported, views are supported, but especially when it goes third party with Oracle and Teradata, I wouldn't be too sure that everything is yet supported. But mid to long term, this is the direction that this tool is going to go to integrate all of it eventually. Okay, so this is that, and let me go head over here. Here in the collection section of the catalog. Right, this is actually also cool. We have that Purview account Lauren. This is sort of the name of the Purview account, right? Then I created a collection. That's the name of it. Basically, an item for structuring and putting also security around this, like a logical item for management. And then here we have the SQL database that I was talking about, and we could set up a new skin. Here we could do an edit and delete. I'm going to talk more to this next time in terms of how I created this, what type of authentication you need to set up, etc., and go from there. So that's that. So here the collections. Here I can actually drill into this. So here, this database that I created, the test database, is in the finance collection. Here I see the assets, and then I can also browse into here, sort this, structure my test, okay, DBO. Just look at what's there. Here's our stored procedure again, and obviously I can get to here and here as well. So many different ways. Now this is all in Purview, right? So let me head over now to Synapse Studio. If I find it, do I have it open? Okay, here I have it open. And remember, right? Last time we talked about adding Purview to Synapse Studio, so that searchers or data consumers and producers can actually use it when they kind of explore this stuff. And they, I'm thinking of data engineers writing, are tasked to write some sort of a script with some input tables, right? And then let's say they have to do like a customer analysis. So obviously they need a customer table as a starting point. And then they would use this. But before we get there, let me talk real quickly to the Microsoft Purview connectivity here. So this is the icon there that you would come to, and obviously I'm already connected here, as you can see. Really simple process. You just once you're not connected, you click connect, provide that name of your Purview account, and then you're good to go. I might disconnect this just to test it out later in that video and show you the process. Let's see how far we get. Before I do that, though, I want to first go to that other piece that I was talking about. So here I'm in develop section, right? And then let me head on the top here to that search bar, and then you can see here now there's that Purview drop down popping up. I can switch to the workspace, and let me see if I can switch back. So when I click back in, it pops up again, and then I can see Purview, right? And when I see Purview, I can also type in stuff here now, and what it does, it's actually searching. It's searching the artifacts within Purview. That is what you get for this integration stuff. Right, so if I go sales, then it brings me the sales order detail, the sales customer, and all of that, which is good. And then let me go for the stored proc again, and then I bring that one up, and everything works out fine. Then I see even the lineage in here, and I do, right, and I can even do the other thing that we did, switch to the assets. So now I'm switching to customer. And then I go back here and switch to the stored proc again, and I can see all how this is related. Now keep in mind, this is inside Synapse Studio, right? This is no more Purview, so I have this fully integrated now. And you know, this really ties to me as a data engineer, or even AI engineer, or someone writing a script within Synapse, and them exploring potential source data that is helpful in that process. So let me go back to like sales again, and then sales customer. Well, that's the same as I just did, but there's a test table as well. Okay, so there's a product description, and obviously that's not part of a lineage, so this must be empty. There's no stored procedure using this at the moment, or any other type of functionality. So this is pretty slick. So I basically showed how this integrates. Now let me go back here, and this is full disclosure. This may go wrong, but should add to the fun. So what I'm gonna do now is I disconnect this. So Microsoft Purview, and we're in dev here, right? So I'm gonna disconnect. Okay. And then I just want to see. So this may take a bit. Disconnected, right? Perfect. So let me go back, data, and I just want to see how quickly this works the right way. See, this is already gone. So now it's really only search. There's no more connectivity here. The Purview drop down doesn't come up no more, right? That's what I mean. So now let's go back to that Purview, right? And so once you have your Purview account set up, right, then you can come here and say connect to Purview. And the way I did it was I basically chose my account, right? And this is the Purview account that I use for this demo. And then I hit apply. And then this should ideally work. Now, I actually never tried it to drop it and recreate it, but it did it. So, and now let's see. So this is all, looks all good. So we can hit refresh. Now let me go back here and click up here again, and I see the Purview coming back again. This is pretty slick. So I like that. Now the intelligence still works here. It brings still up the stored proc there. I can still go over here, and does it show up? It does. Even the lineage is still coming up. That's pretty good. Pretty good. So okay, so let's go back to the slides. Just want to make sure I stay in time. So we did browse the GUI. Now, of course, there's a lot more that I can do with the GUI. We did look at the lineage, right? What else is there? Purview accounts, Synapse Studio. We did also that, right? So the only other thing basically is left to do is the scan itself, and how I did set this one up. I would say we save this for the next video, and maybe there is a way that I can show you here real quick, maybe 1-2 more minutes, the navigation of Purview itself. I mean, Purview is not really in the scope for this, but I think it's important to get going with some of the scanning that I did, and we can definitely add to this next time. But I can actually say register here, and then you gotta tell Purview what kind of source to register, and there's a lot of pieces in here. But before I spend some time on this, let me follow up on that next time, because that may take a bit here, and we go from there. Okay, have a good one. Cheers.